Yeah, welcome, sir. I have also Ronke Rashidat Abdullahi. Can you do a brief introduction, Ronke?
Good evening, everyone. You're all welcome to the con. I'm so excited to be part of those that will benefit from today's discussion. I am Ronke Abdullahi. I currently work with Meristem Security Limited under the MORE team. And also, I'm glad to inform you all that I work with
Oh.
Dr. Femi Oladile. He's my boss. And trust
Thank you,
me,
Ronke.
you enjoy all what he have for us.
Thank you so much, Ronke. And I can also see on the call Mrs. Olaide Diola. Please, can you do an introduction?
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't expect to be called up. Yes, my name is Olaide Grace Adiola. I currently work with Believe and Sons Limited as payroll administrator here in the UK. And I'm happy to join the meeting, hoping to learn new things as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we are done with our introduction, so we'll just go straight into the meat of the matter. Since it's a recorded session, for those who are unable to join at this time, I believe that they will be able to join later on. So today we're going to be speaking about supporting, like I said, the target audience in navigating accounting professional landscapes. It's a challenge for many parents, for many students to say, okay, I want to study accounting. I think I like accountants or and all of that, but just plunging into the deep without understanding what the profession stands for can be a bit dangerous. So I welcome you to this webinar where we'll be talking about how your questions, your doubts, worries, anxieties can be answered, and we prefer solutions that can help you navigate the accounting landscape. It's easy for us to just assume that accounting is one line of profession where it's many and diverse. So we're going to be looking at how we would run through this. At this point, when it's time, I would be allowing us to also use the Q&A so we can ask our questions, unmute or send in our chat so that we can all join together in enjoying the webinar. So once again, I welcome you, and a brief about me. I have a PhD in accounting, and currently I am lead coach at More by Mary STEM. I'm also a senior research fellow at the Faith Institute, amongst other things. My core competencies include knowledge and learning advisory, business advisory, financial literacy, public policy, and I'm not a fan of football. So I use this because I used to be a fan of football, but some things changed and I just moved away from being a fan of football. So we have this question and comments that go around many times. You hear accounting is a professional course. When you ask secondary school students, why do you want to study accounting? The primary response that we get is it is because accounting is a professional course. And I follow up this question with, okay, so which course is not a professional course? And I say that because many times there's a misunderstanding and a misconception and an idea that only courses that have professional organizations are professional courses, while other courses are unprofessional courses. But that's not true. The day that I realized how crisis management was a significant skill and competence was the day that I was close to a stampede, and I saw how one person came and organized everybody. And I believe hundreds of people became calm in less than 10 minutes. And I'm like, okay, so if we have a course, crisis management, and someone says it's not a professional course, what can be more professional than that? Or how about food? How about education? How about all sorts? So many times accountants lie to themselves or we lie to ourselves that accounting is a professional course. I think it's a myth that we need to bust. All courses are professional courses. when we talk about professionalization, it's not just about certificates, it's about skills, it's about delivery. So while it is true that accounting has professional known bodies that have been around for over 100 years, even more, we understand that all courses generally are professional in their own right. So I want us to lay this foundation as we move on so that we don't make the mistake of assuming that accounting is the only professional course amongst especially management courses. So we also will be looking at other management courses like business administration. Sometimes we see banking and finance, or which is now more popularly called finance. We also have courses in some instances like international relations and human resource management and all of those. So among those, accounting likes to brag and say that they are professional, but I believe that all courses are professional in their right. I got this idea of I'm counting, which is accounting actually. So I ask, what are you counting? And many times when you ask students about accounting, another myth is that they feel like it is all about figures and numbers. Yes, accounting is heavy on numbers, but there are other areas of accounting that don't have anything to do with numbers. So like ethics. Ethics, for example, basically is qualitative social norms. We're looking at cultures, we're looking at responses, we're looking at emotions, we're looking at areas where accountants don't necessarily have to crunch numbers. Also, many times people will say, oh, technology is taking away accountants' job. It's also a myth because accounting is not just about the record keeping. Besides the record keeping, there's critical thinking, there is judgment, there is skepticism. There are areas beyond the numbers. And so when you choose to study accounting, understand that you're not just coming to crunch numbers, you're not just coming with calculator or Excel spreadsheets. You're looking at other many areas that are beyond the numbers. And so in my years of studying accounting, I have realized that accounting is basically two things. Accountants are strategists and they use information, both qualitative and quantitative information, to derive insights through a process from data to information to insights. And then when they provide this information, decision makers can take this information and use it to create decisions that would achieve organizational goals. So when people ask you, why do you want to be an accountant? Don't look at the numbers. Look at what you want to do by adding value to organization as strategists, as decision enablers. It's a multidimensional profession. You would see in a few minutes when I'll be talking about the different broad areas and very micro mini areas of accounting, and you'd see how all of the things that you'll be learning in higher education would help you to support those positions, those responsibilities. And I believe that it's worth your time. And I must say thank you to Mr. Umojo. He was one that introduced me to Notebook LM, which I used to design this particular slide and some of the other slides that you'll be seeing that I'll be sharing in a few minutes. So before we go into this, I want to believe that there might be on this call, or those who would listen afterwards, those who may not necessarily understand how accounting works in Nigerian higher education. So that's why we have these slides. And it's just a reminder, basically, there are three ownership structures in Nigeria that we have. We have universities owned by the federal government, by the state government, and by private organizations, and the privates can now be scattered all over. There are those owned by religious organizations, individuals, groups, communities. There are different types that we have, but generally three classifications: owned by federal government, owned by state government, and owned by private individuals or organizations. Similarly, for the sake of studying accounting in Nigeria, there are three different types of universities. There are conventional universities, and there are many. They are the ones with the highest number. And there are technology-based universities that are still offering accounting, although the regulator has asked that they stop but there are still some universities that still offer accounting, although they are technology-based universities like LAUTECH. Or I am reliably informed that LAUTECH is trying to transition into a conventional university, but while that is yet to happen, LAUTECH, the tech, is a technology university, but they still offer accounting. And one thing I missed out for conventional universities is that most of the accounting courses are for 4 years for your regular entry using UTME. And when you come through direct entry, you use 3 years, depending on the qualification that you're bringing into the system. For technology-based universities, because most of their courses are 5-year courses, accounting, unfortunately, too, runs for 5 years. So if you're considering going to LAUTECH, for example, you understand that you're using 5 years at the university. And there are those universities we call the certificate plus universities. Oh, sorry, I should go back a bit. Okay, these certificate-based universities, on their own, certificate plus universities, aside the accounting degree that you get when you complete your program, you can also get a certification. So, for example, Babcock runs a model where you can graduate in 4 years, but remain in school for an extra 1 year to complete your professional certification. Babcock runs that. Kwasu also runs a professional leg of accounting, such that you could also use an extra time and then become a qualified accountant before you graduate. So while this is important, it's also good that you take your decision based on other factors. Maybe if for example, your parents are keen on proximity, you're looking at proximity to your home. You're also looking at how the pedigree of the university, the strength of their alumni. Finances is also very important, but thank God for NELFund. You can access NELFund to study in especially federal and state universities in Nigeria. I must also mention that there are other institutions that offer accounting or accountancy. So you might see that in some institutions, some polytechnics, they would offer what we call the ND, which is the National Diploma, the Higher National Diploma, and the Postgraduate Diploma. There are also monotechnics where maybe you see a College of Business and Administration. So they offer only courses in business and administration, and then they'll be able to award ND and HND as the case may be. Major classifications of accounting. Generally, we have 7 classifications generally, and I will be speaking to this with respect to what you could aspire to become in the future. So I would start with auditing and assurance. Auditing and assurance gives you a qualification that allows you to understand an organization, examine them, and provide decision makers with reasonable assurance that the organization is compliant. So we have the regular internal audit, external audit, fraud investigation, examination, forensic services, where you have to appear before a law court and talk about an organization. So it's a broad field. Internal audit alone, inside internal audit, then we begin to talk about so many other fields, such as internal controls and the likes. So when you say you want to study accounting, you have to understand that you would be taking all of these fields, but you can then specialize. Specialization generally comes after your first degree, so HND or BSc, but you could pick interest in an area as you start your career. So it's good that you understand what exactly is auditing. For internal auditors, for example, what they're trying to do is to find out ways where the organization complies with management, with corporate governance. So you say, this is how we want to do things. Are they compliant? And how can we comply? And issues around that. External audits comes with respect to checking an organization if what they have presented, if it's financial statement, for example, if what they have presented as their financial statement complies or materially states the facts of what has happened within that reporting period. Sometimes you now have specialist skills like forensic, where you have to now go to court, appear before a court and analyze statements more critically. The second major focus area is performance management. So we're looking at areas such as cost computation, pricing strategy, presenting actual versus standard budget versus actual, looking at variances, what went wrong. We plan to produce at this cost, we are producing at another cost. Apologies. My network went off, and that's one of the areas that we need to look at as accountants. How can we maximize value with respect to challenges such as this? Okay, so please, I would just hold on a bit to share my screen and then we would continue again. Apologies. Okay, so performance management, we have spoken about that. And then we now go to taxation. Taxation, it's a very broad field. You can have taxation of different types, and you could work as a tax expert in different kind of organizations. Every organization in Nigeria needs a tax expert. So there are various opportunities for an accountant to work in taxation. The next one is information system. So you could just keep your questions until I'm done with the presentation, and then I'll take the questions and we move on from there. Information systems. So for information systems, the core competence is to be able to build from scratch or continue to build up on already existing information systems. So an organization needs an accounting system or a management information system, and you're able to come in as an accountant to help them structure it, design the flow, the process flow, and help them to see, maybe create a dashboard that helps them to look at all of the activities that have happened within a certain period. So it's a very wonderful field. The next is financial management. Financial management has to do with managing finances. So major classifications would be portfolio management, treasury, investments, and all of that around managing the financial resources of an organization. many times those who have interest in this field would usually transition to finance. For example, when you have significant specialty in managing portfolio, managing the treasury of an organization, generally you see them transition to finance. So accounting allows you to move between functions in an organization. For information systems, for example, too, you could move on into audit and assurance. You could work in IT. For taxation, you can work in any part of the organization. In operations, you can work anywhere. For performance management, it also allows you to move around. And finally, financial reporting. Financial reporting is about presenting what has happened in an organization during a reporting period. So it gives you significant leverage to do that. And so you look at compliance. So when you talk compliance, many times people look at lawyers, but financial reporting compliance is also something significant that accountants participate in very well. I want to also talk about 4 things that might be a bit of a challenge for students aspiring to study accounting. You could work in the private sector or the public sector in Nigeria. So if you work in the private sector, that means you're working for private organizations. In public service, you're working for the government, maybe from the federal, the state, or the local government, any arm of the government. And also, there is the fact that you can practice and you can work. So as an accountant, you can work. But for you to be able to practice, you need to be certified. You need to be licensed to practice accounting. And that's one of the issues that becomes a bit tricky when we look at the field of accounting. For example, in Nigeria, if you bring a foreign certification that is not accepted yet in Nigeria, you can use that certification to work in Nigeria, but you cannot practice. Currently in Nigeria, for broad-based accounting, only 2 organizations are certified to certify accountants to practice in Nigeria, and that's the ANAN, the Association of National Accountants of Nigeria, and ICAN, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. So even if you have a certification from, let's say, the UK, Canada, and you come into Nigeria, you would need to be recertified or relicensed by those 2 to be able to practice in Nigeria, because practice involves using a stamp, using your projecting yourself out there as a professional accountant. But for working, you could just do the work. Like I said, you could do the work as a tax expert, you could provide tax advisory, but when you want to interface with regulators, you need to be certified. And I have a slide that shows some of the professional organizations that we have in Nigeria. So you could start thinking about it as a student. Which one do I want to do? Do I want to do taxation? Do I want to do information systems? Do I want to do financial reporting? And every other one. You could use that and then gain mastery of your skill before you even complete your program. And that way you have greater chance of being a better accountant than someone who may not know about this. So for broad-based general accounting certifications, like I mentioned, ANAN, and basically there are 2 levels. You start as an associate and then you end up as a fellow, which is the peak, the zenith of your professionalism in any of these organizations. But right now, many of them are trying to bring down the qualifications to students. So you see many of them coming to say, okay, you can be a graduate member or a student member. A student member means while you are on campus, you can begin to write some foundational preliminary examinations that qualify you to become a member, maybe towards graduation or just immediately after graduation. And for tax purposes, there is a specific chartered organization which is for taxation alone. So if you want to practice tax in Nigeria, you must be licensed by the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria. But if you want to do broad-based accounting, you have to be certified either by ANAN or by ICAN. There are other professional bodies that their charter statuses are currently unknown. So maybe they haven't concluded the issue. There are lots of them. And so I would like to warn you, and that's why I put them there. Don't fall for them except you are sure and you have information that their charter status is coming up very soon. Because if you do them, you will not be able to practice in Nigeria just yet until they are finalized and they receive their charter. So for in Nigeria, if you want to practice in Nigeria, you can pursue a certification with ANAN or ICANN. ANAN offers a different model. They offer something like the model of the law school, where you go for 9 months and go through several trainings to become certified if you pass the qualifying exams. Unlike ICANN, where you can take exams at will. So ICANN exams are usually, I think, between 2 to 4 diets in a year. And so you can take it at will at any time, complete it at any time, and complete and just move on. But ANAN, I know that ANAN, you have to be at their school for 9 months and then get certified after passing the qualifying exams. I know for executive people, they give some kind of they relax some of the rules, so you could take it from your different locations and take the trainings from your different locations. But generally, you need to go for 9 months, write the qualifying exam, and become qualified. So I will be sharing, as I round off, some of the nuggets from my book, Tripartite Accounting, Exploring Elements of Accounting Profession. This book was published in 2015, and one of the reasons why I started talking about it now is because I see that many young people are mistaking accounting. And so someone comes and says, "Oh, I want to do this." And you are realizing that what they want to do does not necessarily tally with studying accounting. And so it's easy to make that kind of mistake, having to run 4 or 5 years of your life and come to realize that, oh, that's not what I wanted to do, does not make so much sense. But so this is why this is a great webinar that you can learn from and enjoy some of the nuggets that I will be sharing with you here. So I will just quickly move on to some of the nuggets. In that book, the major argument is that accounting, like every other profession, is tripartite. So there are 3 arms. You have the practice arm, the policy arm, and the research arm. Unfortunately, we have focused so much attention on the practice arm, leaving the other 2 arms. We have left them unattended to so much. So you see, someone will tell you, if you want to study accounting, better go and do ICANN, because if you don't do ICANN, you cannot be recognized in the industry. That is true, but there are other areas of accounting. For example, if you want to do accounting research, you don't necessarily need ICANN. It's good. It's a good addition. And I will show you how we can combine all of this to get a better, well-rounded accountant. But it's good that you make it clear and not give misinformation. So that's why this webinar is here to help us understand those 3 areas. So what do we mean by practice? Practice is when you use and operationalize your skill of accounting to support decision making in any of those fields that I had mentioned earlier. So it's taxation, information systems, financial reporting, audit and assurance, financial management, any area, or performance management. Any of those areas, when you operationalize your skill and you work with it to bring it to life to students, to in your workplace, either as an employee or a manager, wherever you are practicing accounting. I'll give you 2 instances. You go and audit an organization, you check their financial statements, and you certify that, oh, this financial statement represents the true and fair view of the organization. You are practicing accounting. So when a decision maker takes that financial statement, he reads it, he says, oh, this was signed by a professional accountant. I can agree, I can attest that this is somewhat valid. You have practiced accounting. If you're a financial reporter, you look at the organization, you take their source documents and you use it and turn it into a financial statement. You're practicing accounting. So those are areas of practice. Areas of policy in accounting has to do with creating frameworks, creating standards that other accountants can then follow. So a practitioner follows sets of rules, but don't set those rules. The policy accountants are the ones that set those rules. So an accountant says, oh, I'm following IFRS, I'm following this rule, I'm following that rule, and all of those rules. There are many rules. And so that's why I said that accounting is not just about numbers, it's also about reading a lot. I am not sure that if you take the accounting rules, that you can finish it in 4 years. There are lots. And the issue is that they keep changing every time because with improvements, the rules also change. So that's why accountants will keep updating themselves. But practitioners are not the ones that set those rules. They can contribute to setting the rules, but they don't necessarily set those rules. So that's what policy does. And finally, research. Research looks at the work of both policy and practice and says, are we doing it right? Can it be better? What are we getting wrong? And all of those things to create innovation so that policy accountants can also create better rules, so that practitioners can also do it better. So that's why it is a relationship that has to be kept cordial. Because when policymakers create rules and practitioners grumble at those rules, it won't make the profession to move forward. But when researchers look at it and says, oh, why don't we do it this way? We have found this out. We have found this out. This is a better approach. Then policy accountants can operationalize that and support practitioners in operationalizing it to see that everything goes well. So that's why that relationship has to be cordial. And I hope that you're understanding this. So there is a metrics for, okay, what do I want to do? If you want to become a practitioner, and you don't have to decide to be a practitioner instantly when you get into the university or a polytechnic or a monotechnic, but you have it at the back of your mind concerning your career trajectory. You can move among any of this. So you can start as a practitioner and end up as a policymaker. You can start in practice and end up in research. You can start in research and move to policy and then move again to practice. You can move. But if you want to do that, you also have to understand what are the requirements. So for practice, for example, the basic requirement is to have your BSc. Some people say that, oh, just have ICANN. You don't need a BSc in accounting. Yes, that's true. But also we have found that the grounding that a BSc in accounting gives you supports the strength of your professional certification. An accountant with a BSc in accounting has more theoretical grounding than an accountant who was possibly a medical doctor and just sat for the professional certification. I give you an example. A doctor who becomes an accountant is like someone who learned how to drive a Mercedes Benz. Give him a Lamborghini and he may struggle. So, but BSc accounting is supposed to prepare you theoretically, holistically, such that even when times change, you are also able to change because you have significant grounding in theory. So the basic requirement for practice is a BSc, and then for consolidation, you need to be a member of a professional body, a certified professional body. In Nigeria, if you want to practice, ANAN or ICANN or CITN, depending on where you want to specialize in. And like you can see, for policy also, you also need a BSc. Generally, the Nigerian law or the jurisdictional law in wherever location you are would determine what makes you a policy accountant. Sometimes the law can say, oh, you have to have experience as a practitioner. So that's very funny. It can be an experience as a practitioner. Some would say, oh, you need to be a policy, you need to have an educational qualification in public policy or just generally financial policy. So it can be determined and driven by law. And in Nigeria, the responsible organization is called the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, FRCN. For research, generally also, you need to progress through the ranks and get a PhD. A PhD is a Doctor of Philosophy degree, and the association in charge of accountants is the Nigerian Accounting Association. I would say that they are not as active as their American counterpart, but that's the organization in charge of accounting research in Nigeria. I think my time is almost up, so I would just run some of the slides so that I don't keep you waiting unnecessarily. So there is a challenge that I found from the book, which I highlighted rather in the book, and it's that there are tensions among practice, policy, and research. Everyone wants to assert that, oh, I'm the boss. So policy says, I'm the boss, I make the rules. Practice says, oh, we're the ones in the field, we understand better. Research says, don't abandon me. I also understand this thing. I understand the relationship between the two of you. So instead of working together, accounting policy, practice, and research are working as worlds apart, pursuing their own agendas. So it's taken from Laughlin in 2011. And so in Nigeria, we see practitioners saying, oh, sorry, we don't need policy accountants. They make unreasonable rules. Researchers are also saying, oh, we are more superior. We have more superior knowledge. And practitioners are saying, see, we are the ones in charge. We know what is happening in the field and they're working apart. As you build your career in accounting, don't add to this crisis. Rather, look for a way to solve the crisis. And I will just skip this. It also talks about finding middle ground among research, practice, and policy, such that we come together to say, okay, this is what we want for the accounting profession, rather than what we want to do individually based on our areas of specialization. And the idea is this. I wrote something in that book. I said, theory informs policy. Policy guides practice, and practice grounds research. They must be separately related, but not jointly integrated. So we have that such that when we do research, policy can use that research to make better rules. Practitioners can use those better rules to practice better, and everyone wins. Okay, so unfortunately, the university system has been seen as the pipeline for ICANN and ANAN and nothing more. So you see someone say, oh, there is nothing that can be done in the university system than to produce accountants who then go on to write ICANN. There are even some people that tell you that ICANN exams are more tougher than the university exams. And some may be true, but that depends on the university and the lecturer generally. And so, like I said, because of my time, I would skip some parts of this so that I have more time to take your questions, and then we can move on. The idea and the ideal thing is that we infuse research, policy, and practice to create an accountant that can function as a policy accountant if need be, that can function as a practitioner if need be, and that can also function as a researcher if need be. I recall during COVID, there was a rule that about rent, how to recognize rent, because governments were saying, see, people cannot pay rent because they are not working. So there was some kind of concession that was given for rent, and that changed the landscape of financial reporting. I know many accountants who were stuck, unable to understand how to apply those rules. And the idea is because everyone is working far apart. If there was a consensus, then everyone will be able to come together to say, okay, this new rule, how do we operationalize it and get better results? The idea is an accountant in practice is as much a professional as a researcher and a policymaker. No one is higher than the other. So when you are studying accounting, don't add to the crisis of saying, oh, accounting is greater than, as a practitioner, I'm higher and better than a researcher or an educator. Everyone wins. Thank you so much. And I would now open up the line for us to speak and enjoy. I don't know if you have access to the chat. I think I've enabled the Q&A, so you could drop your chats. If not, I will just enable everybody to speak so that we can then talk as we want to talk. Okay, you would have to accept the opportunity to speak. Anyone, do you have any questions? We now all have access to speak so we can ask our questions or drop our comments. Should I start calling names so that we can speak? Matilda Adifalijo.
Hi.
Do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah. I mean, it was a beautiful presentation. Thank you very much. So I have a question. I have a younger sister that at some point in her life she did some accounting, but she just considers it very technical in like an interesting way. And I've been try to okay, so my question is, how do I in this sense um help this sister to see that accounting can be very, very, interesting, because to her it's like a lot of numbers. You have to debit this one, you have to credit this one, you have to know how this is supposed to fit into the trial balance and different things. So how do I preach the gospel of, oh, accounting is actually interesting, you need this? I think she's on the call, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's my question.
Thank you so much, Matilda. And that's an interesting question. But I would not sugarcoat it. Yes, there are areas in accounting that are tough. The number crunching can be